Hello, hello, hello. I see that the fans are clamoring for Ramon, and instead we have the equally dashing, equally witty Stuart.
Slightly less dashing. Also, I don't have a shoulder for whatever reason. The
For-
AI thing has decided.
It's decided that we don't need the pats any, or we could pat over here.
I can do this shoulder. We're fine.
So we are in our last week. Everything's chill. I skipped the last two lessons, so I'm going to lean on y'all a lot because we're going to be looking at building a forum leaderboard. We can do this. Oh gosh, hello everybody. So we're going to build something that looks a bit like this, huh?
Yep, that's the plan.
And we're going to be focusing on asynchronous programming?
Yes. So
Wait.
a lot of this stuff is going to be done. But you've already talked about asynchronous things generally, I think.
We definitely did this when I wasn't here, yeah.
Yeah, but the idea is that you can do multiple things at once because you kick a thing off, and then when it's done, it comes back and gives you the results, but you can do other things in the interim.
So instead of being limited by JavaScript going sort of top to bottom,
yeah,
it's like, oh, I'm going to multitask. I'm going to do this, and while you're doing that, okay, cool.
Absolutely. So it's useful for things like going and fetching data off of the web, for example, because you can go and fetch it and then carry on doing things, and then when it's done, it'll come back to you.
Perfect. Incomparable. Fab. Let's go ahead and get started. I can't click the button.
Okay, so this is what we're going to build. Start coding.
Okay. Oh, so it doesn't look too scary. We're going to use const to declare const form latest is equal to the string. So we need our quote marks.
And I will copy that.
Yeah. And then we're going to do that exact same thing, but for forum topics URL. And it's going to be assigned to the string forum.free. Okay.
Okay.
Cool. I'm super confident.
That'll seem okay. And submit, and we're good.
We are unstoppable. Nothing can hurt us.
We should point out before we've done this that they've already provided us with an index.html and a styles.css. They're all here already. We don't have to write any of that. So that's all quite handy.
This is very, very chill. And this feels like we're doing the same thing again.
This is just literally the same thing again, isn't it?
Oh,
I'm going to cheat and just copy the whole thing. Because it makes it quicker. Equals, close the quotes. That one. Save on typing. Always a good idea. Const avatar URL equals the string that. Check that. We're happy with that. Yep, that's just the same as the previous one. And on we go.
Hurt us. Now access the post container. So const post container equals get element by document dot get element by ID. And then inside that post container. Is it doing that thing where it's giving us like stuff that can't hurt us until it hurts us?
So what's interesting here is our variable is called posts container like this, but the actual thing, hash post container, if you look in index.html and we scroll down to here, we can see we've got tbody ID equals post container, which has got a dash in it, but that's fine. But obviously variable names can't have a dash in them because it looks like posts minus container if you do that.
Oh, yeah.
So
I didn't even notice that just breezed right past me.
It's not, you can use IDs named how you like, but quite often people will make IDs separated with dashes.
Yeah.
Because it looks nice. And CSS can handle this quite happily as well.
So but JavaScript just doesn't love it because we've got minus as an operator because JavaScript is trying to do things with it.
Absolutely. So CSS is quite happy with a class or an ID with a dash in it, as is HTML for IDs and classes and so on. JavaScript doesn't like it. So you will quite often see people use dash separators for IDs and studly caps like this, or, and I believe we've talked about this before, or that some people will do. But that's all fine.
But if we check our code, do we get another?
You do.
So we're going to use the async keyword to create an Okay, so const fetch data is equal to. I was absent for this.
So, so if we just wanted an arrow function called fetch data, we could just do it like that, right? Follow, that makes sense so far?
Yeah.
But we want it to be an asynchronous function. And the point about asynchronous functions is we can do asynchronous things within them with a slightly different syntax. We can use the await statement, which you can't do otherwise. So
Okay.
to make a function async, stick async in front of the definition of the function.
Okay. That doesn't
So,
seem half as scary as I thought it would be.
no, not at all. So you can imagine we could also have done function fetch data like that. And if we wanted that to be an async function, we can do that.
Oh.
Same thing. But this has asked us to make it an arrow function. So we will make it an arrow function. Const fetch data equals an async arrow function. Are we happy with that?
Cautiously, yeah. But we just put async in front of an empty arrow function.
Yep.
Okay. If that gives
just
us a green stripe, I won't be surprised from your
it does.
talent. I'll just be surprised because I expected this late in the game. I expected to be freaked out already, and they're
No,
definitely bringing us
we're all
in
good.
nice and slow.
We're all good. Yep. This is using so we're going to use async function. So we need to declare them as being async.
So we're going to use try catch, and they've given us the syntax again, which is really, really solid.
Yep.
Inside our fetch data, add a try catch statement. The catch block should have an error parameter called error. So I think we could actually type almost everything. So we could try, and then the curly braces. But we don't have anything we're putting in there yet.
Correct.
And then on the catch, we'll have our smooth braces and say error, which seems like it's a common convention.
Yes.
And we're not putting anything in there. So yeah, I think that's all it wants for now.
That looks right. Yep. So people who did the previous project, there we were using .catch. So we were using .then and .catch when calling a function. So that is one way to do things asynchronously. And you talked about promises and so on. The reason to use async functions is that we can do that promise-based stuff, the things we did with then and with catch, but you can do this so it doesn't look like it's asynchronous. It looks like it's working, call a thing, get the result back. But under the covers, secretly, it's using all the promise stuff. So this is why async functions are a cool thing, because you can do this. And then later on, we'll be using await to call stuff.
Okay.
So we'll get to that point, but that's the point of this course, is to introduce that idea. So you're happy with that? Yes?
I mean, I'm as happy as I'm getting.
Congratulations, it passes. Green stripe.
So we used fetch and then last time. So to perform logic after the promise was resolved. And the promise just means, hey, go and get this information for fetch. And when you've done that, then do this other stuff.
Yes. So in the previous one, we'd have done something like fetch some URL and then do .then. And what it does is it calls fetch, and then here we've defined a function and it runs our function after the fetch is finished. Here, though, we get to do it slightly differently. So
inside the try call block, say const res and assign it to await fetch. So const res equals await fetch. And then inside the smooth braces for fetch, pass in form latest, which is the variable we just made.
Which we defined up above to be a URL.
Okay.
This.
Weird. Oh, so is it going to say like, wait until you've got this resource?
Correct. But you'll notice here, and as we go on to the next one, our next line of code will just be here. So we can just do like console.log res if we wanted to. So instead of having to say, do this thing and then run this function when you're done, it's just the next line of code. This is
Yeah.
why await is cool, because it lets you do
Is
that.
it cool?
Then it is, right? I don't apologize. It's
I
my
like
job.
very uncool things. That's why I did not, at first, until you explained it in a very cool and hip fashion, I did not understand the glory and majesty of fetch
Of
until
async await. Yes,
you made fetch happen.
but I did make fetch happen. But this is useful exactly because it allows you to do this stuff, which is asynchronous. So we're going to hang about until fetch is done and then move on to the next thing. But we don't have to frame it as a load of functions that get called back.
Oh, wait until this, wait until this. This
Yeah,
gives us like
we just present
I
the code as one thing, then the next, then the next, then the next, then the next, which is
yeah.
honestly how people tend to think. You tend to think about it synchronously.
I didn't
So
like these chained callback functions when we did them, though they felt like dominoes.
yes,
And this is just like a recipe.
yeah, it's people used to call it callback hell, and this stuff all got invented. I mean, essentially, you're still doing the same thing as all the nested callbacks under the covers, but through deceitful syntax. It doesn't look like you're doing that, which means that it's much easier to think about this, much easier to understand the code, which is the most important thing, right? I've said before, I know you've said before, the thing you want to do is write code so that the next person to read it, who could well be you in 4 months, can understand it. And stuff like this is much easier to understand than
So this
stuff
is like
where you've got lots and lots of nested callbacks.
JavaScript trying to make this more human readable for us. Is JavaScript making our lives easier?
Yeah.
I'm
So,
not comfortable with that at all.
So the key thing here is that in order to use await, you have to be in an asynchronous function. So that's what the async thing is for. You declare it as async, and then you get to use await inside it. And there are a couple of other things as well, but it doesn't matter. The key thing, the way I always think of it is I want to use await, therefore I need to be in an async function.
I'm chill with this. I think we're gonna get a little. Are we gonna get a?
And we might do. Yeah, there it is. I'll pat myself on this shoulder because this one's gone.
It's shimmering. It is encased in light and imagination. Oh, where are you? Are you in a classic video game?
This is the mining ship Red Dwarf.
Oh yeah, I think other people might come and get me for this, but I think this is one of those cultural gaps where like Americans don't really like Red Dwarf generally,
Yeah, no, agreed.
whereas y'all don't really like Mystery Science Theater. That's just
Agreed.
like where we meet.
Yep. This is absolutely the thing, but I've already done Doctor Who and Blake 7, and we don't have that many more great sci-fi programs.
Nojo's got me back and be like, I thought this was that old school like 3D pinball, like me too, right? We've got people like, yeah, okay, everybody but me liked Red Dwarf.
3 million years from Earth, the mining ship Red Dwarf. Yes.
The mining ship Red Dwarf. Okay. So we want to get the response of our JSON object, and the JSON method will return a promise, which means we have to await it. Wait. And wait, okay. Yeah. Create a constant called data and assign it the value of the await. I don't even think this is going to be that scary. I think it's const data equals await space res.json. And here what this is saying is, hey, I want to make a const called data. I want it to be set to, we'll wait for it, this res.json.
Yes. So the point is that when you call fetch, what you get back is a response object. People tend to call it res or resp, but you call it what you like, obviously, because it's variable. And then it has a JSON method, but that JSON method is also asynchronous. You might think that you just call res.json and get back the JSON, but actually it's another asynchronous method. So you need to await it.
Very chill.
If you call an asynchronous method and you await the result, then it will wait until it's actually done it and then immediately let you carry on. If you don't await it, what you'll get back is a promise.
Which we've covered last time when I wasn't here.
Yes.
I'm deep. So I don't mean to present my faith in you as a negative, but I'm deeply suspicious of how much this makes sense. This should be really, really hard. And one thing I like to tell the learners is different people get things like I will be called home to my reward before I really grok regular expressions. But this making sense right away for me. People just pick stuff up differently.
Totally. Some things you just grasp, some things are a struggle. Some things, I mean, there are things that I still do not understand. 20, 30 years into this, there are things that I'm like, you know what? I just fundamentally don't get this.
So Stuart's not telling you it's hopeless. Stuart's telling you it's hopeless.
No, I'm quite the opposite. I'm telling you that if you don't get some things, you probably still be fine, you know?
Oh, because we've got folks saying, "Oh, this still feels unintuitive." That's okay. Like, we can keep messing with this, and y'all can keep experimenting as well. If it does make more sense over time, amazing. And if it doesn't, you could have stuff that just doesn't always totally click for you, and you could still work around it and be great devs. Or if you're me, robustly mediocre devs who are very laid back.
So yeah, but this is the key thing to understand about using asynchronous functions and then being able to await stuff. So we want to make sure that as you're going on, if we breeze past this too fast, then it will confuse things.
So Nojo's asking a question that I think I might be able to answer. Say, hey, we've already fetched and stored in res. Why does the JSON need to wait? And I think what it needs to wait for is the res to be returned as a JSON object.
Yes, essentially. So going away and fetching a URL, this URL here off the internet, is obviously something that you would think about as asynchronous. It might take 10 seconds, it might take 20 seconds, it needs to do a bunch of work, whichever. Well, yeah, but you know what I mean. So the point is, everyone thinks of that as asynchronous, but a lot of other stuff is also, you need to be thinking of it as asynchronous, and getting the JSON from your response is another one of those things. Yes, we do have the response. So under the covers, it's in there, but turning it into JSON, it might take a lot of time. In general, it doesn't. If you do it with small examples and you're converting, a short thing with a couple of items in it from a request to be JSON, then that would happen very quickly. And so people tend to think, well, I shouldn't have to do it asynchronously. I shouldn't have to await it. But because sometimes you do, the JSON function is defined as returning a promise, defined as running asynchronously. Even if in practice it'll happen pretty much instantly, you still need to think in terms of this stuff is asynchronous. And so I have to treat it asynchronously, even though maybe it would be fast.
So I'm getting to, so notice saying, so getting this as a JSON object means we've got to go back to the URL.
No. So when we do this fetch, we have gone away and fetched the result of the URL and we've got it back. This is just getting what came back from that URL, which is stored inside the browser, and then turning it into a JSON object for us to use. Yes.
Squish is not the right technical term, but
yes, it needs to convert it. And that could potentially take a bunch of time. And that's why it's defined as being an asynchronous function.
And I think what you're saying, just to say I love repeating what smart people say because it's a very, very good skill to have. So what you're saying is when we're thinking about when we want to use await, it's really, hey, I've said we're going to use this resource, or I said we're going to use this process in my program. Do I need this before I go on? Is really the question we ask before we use await.
Yeah. So let us demonstrate a point. So if I turn on the console, and here I'm not going to await it, I'm just going to get it, and then console.log data. We should get. Do I have to do something to make it run? Ooh. Oh, nothing's calling this function. Bear with me.
Oh.
Right. So, that's because this is a dodgy console. Log in a real console. Right. Yes. So This is, so if we don't, so if we don't use free CodeCamp's console and we instead look at the real one, if I clear that,
the console built into your browser.
Yeah, and then run this again. You can see, so here it's console.logging the data, and what that's returned is a promise, which is still pending at the time we logged it. So the point is it hasn't done that conversion. If we await it, then what happens is it waits until that promise fulfills. It either it resolves or it rejects. So if we run that, then now we've actually got all the JSON data. Hooray.
Amazing.
And importantly, this res.json, it doesn't return you JSON in the sense of a big long string with some JSON in it. It converts that into actual JavaScript nested objects. So that's part of what it's doing. You've used JSON.parse in the past, I believe, to parse to convert a string of JSON into JavaScript objects. This is doing that for you.
Okay. Again, not as scary or bad as it could be.
Yeah, so I'll take that back out. But that's why we await, because this is defined, res.json is defined as being an asynchronous function. We should be able to look it up.
Because we're waiting because we need to wait.
Response JSON at MDN, and here it says it takes a response stream, reads it to completion, it returns a promise, which resolves with the result of passing the body text as JSON.
And Stephen's asking, so it's logging a pending promise because we've specified that fetch should be awaited.
Oh, so in the example just now,
sorry,
here we awaited this. So res, when it comes back to us, if we console logged res here, we'd get a response object. We actually have a response object because we awaited that. But when we did that, log data here, so we called res.json and we didn't await it. So what we got back was a promise. So when we logged that is the promise that res.json returned. The promise that fetch returned, we awaited, so it turned from being a promise into the response object, and we stored that in res.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. We take that call back out. So now we're calling res, we're calling fetch and waiting for the result. So instead of getting back a promise, we get back a response object that's stored in res. We then call the response object's JSON method, which returns us a promise. But we await
it into JSON for us.
Yeah. So to give you another example here, we could do data promise. So now data promise is the promise, and then we can do const data equals await data promise. So we get back a promise object, and then we can await a promise object for it to carry on. You know, so we can basically say wait until that promise resolves or rejects, wait until it fulfills, and then data is what we get out of it.
Yeah.
We could even, and I don't know whether this might be more confusing.
No. So further into the project, most of what we're doing is synthesis of putting these together.
Cool.
So if you're happy to continue to explain, this is hopefully the learners are in agreement. I think this is a really useful thing to be like, let's look at this from different corners.
Yeah. So here, for instance, we've just called res.json without awaiting it, so we got back a promise. So now we saw about promises before, so we can do data promise dot then and dot catch. So this is the same thing here. We're calling something which gives us back a promise, and then we can say when that promise fulfills, do the then. So our next thing could go in here. So this is the same thing as the promises stuff you were doing in the previous course. As I say, this is the await stuff is not an actual new thing. It's deceitful syntax to make it easier to understand all this then and catch stuff.
Deceitful syntax, as it has been pointed out, would be a very good Doctor Who villain. I'd love to claim that was me, and it was somebody much cleverer than I am in the comments. Who said that? a Doctor Who episode. I'm so sorry, Tina.
Nice.
Misquoting
It
you.
would actually, yes.
Deceitful syntax.
Okay, so so we did need to await. Were there other questions here? As you say, we want to be sure we're happy.
Stephen, I think that yes. So we're doing the same kinds of things that we were doing with promises, but we're just learning a different syntax and maybe conceptually a bit different because, like, hey, a promise is like, hey, don't you do this until you're ready, until you've fulfilled these other obligations. Whereas await is like, be cool, do this when you're done.
Yeah, this is purely a different way of writing it, but it does the same thing. So imagine here we were going to do console.log data, right? So we call fetch on that URL, we wait for the result. So because we awaited it, we got back a response object rather than a promise. We then call JSON on that response object and we await it, so we don't get back a promise, we get back the actual data. And if we look in the console, it should log our data, hopefully. Again, got to actually call the function or it doesn't do anything. Right, and here you can see it's logged our object. This is what got fetched back from that URL. And if we go and look at that URL, it should be a load of JSON, which it is.
And like, this is something I had the most difficult time with, but JSON, it always looks like a big blob of text. It looks scary, but A, you can format it. And B, once you get used to seeing it as objects like JavaScript objects, big blobs of JSON get a lot less scary with time, right?
Yeah. Yes. So the reason I brought this up is this is the await syntax, but the syntax you learned in the previous thing would have gone something like fetch forum latest dot then. So and then inside this, so we call fetch and then we use then to pass a callback function for when it's done, and that callback function gets our res thing. So then we want another function, which would be res.json then data. And then in here we do console.log data. So what that's doing is it's doing a fetch and then. So we get back the result. We then call res.json and then we put the then on that, which then gives us back our data, and then we log the data. So those lines are the same thing as those lines. It's
okay.
This stuff, the then and catch stuff that you learned in the previous course, what you get here is this nested thing where each function is kind of nested in from the previous one. So you can imagine doing this 5 or 6 times. You end up with quite a lot of nested functions, and it's more confusing to read, but it's not doing anything different. This here is literally doing exactly the same thing as this.
Okay. And Monica makes a really solid point. I'm not picking on you, but says, you know what? Sometimes the syntactic sugar, and these are like the different ways to write things, these snappier, easier, faster, sweeter ways, sometimes feels like it makes things a little bit more difficult for learners. But A, if you've got 2 things that do the same thing, if you're writing your own code, you get to pick, sweethearts. Like, this is your choice. It's your code. I mean, not in the tutorials where you have to do a very specific thing.
Yeah.
But this is just giving you an option later down the line, sort of previewing to say, hey, this async stuff is probably going to come up in code bases when you see it in the future. Let's just look at it for a hot second.
Yes.
Oh, Monica, solid again. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Monica's saying, oh, this is like if thens, if then, being turned into cases where you can have the same logic, but actually it's a lot cleaner to understand.
The case is easy to understand, yes. There may be people looking at this. You can actually do something clever with this where you return res.json inside the thing and then don't nest them. But but don't worry about that. The async await stuff is generally easier to do. The reason you're taught both in the courses is because if you just teach people the await stuff, it's a bit hard to grasp. Going straight from synchronous coding to this, people tend to come away thinking, I don't really understand what asynchronous things are, so I just sort of sprinkle the word await around and then it works by magic. Whereas if you understand some of the underlying stuff, then you get to use the whizzy new await syntax, and that's cool. Now, you can imagine a course where you're just taught about await and no one ever mentions the word promise to you, and you never learn about this, and it can work, but it can be confusing. So some people will have learned that better, but it is a bit difficult to grasp the await stuff unless you understand some of the underlying mechanics. And that's what the previous course was teaching.
So if you, like me, skipped the promises and went right to this, really, you've done yourself a disservice.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I'm not a great believer in you must understand everything underneath what you're doing, because you're not interested in understanding the whole thing, right? This is it's a hobby or it's a job. It's not your life. But equally, there is some value in understanding what this is actually doing, because the first time it goes wrong, if you don't understand why it's doing what it's doing, it can be extremely baffling to work out why it's gone wrong.
Ooh.
So this, I understand why FCC teach it this way. So,
I want to move on because we're going to hit something that we should actually not do in practice. And I want the learners to yell at us when they see the thing. And like, so we're going to hit something as we go, which is something that you probably shouldn't actually do in real programming. And when we get there, I'm going to be mean, like joy of coding. You got to hush so the other people can get it, because you've obviously outed yourself as an expert. So just give everybody a second first. But like, we're eventually going to hit something. If you can yell, wait, stop, don't do it, and tell us why, you will get bonus points, which can be traded in for nothing.
Okay, so we will continue on. So
okay, we're going to log the data to the console inside our try block.
So you literally the thing we just did.
Yeah. Console log data. Oh.
Sorry. And then we have to actually call the function. So this is literally just the stuff I was just doing. Yeah. My apologies.
You should apologize.
And then if we bring up the console, we should see it actually logging it. Which we don't. This is the stuff that we just saw. Winner.
If there's okay, so we need to add, so this catch is to say, hey, if we have a problem, here's what we're going to do instead.
Yeah.
Add a console log. Oh, we're just going to console log smooth braces error.
Yep. And then we need to remove that. So now, this is obviously not going to cause an error, but imagine we tried to fetch, actually, no, I'll tell you what would be better. If we go up to here, so we make this URL, this is no longer a valid URL, right? It's going to try fetching something weird. It's going to try fetching a file that begins in an exclamation mark and not find it. And we can see in here, it's logging our error. So
as a syntax error.
Our error is... And it logs... It's a syntax error. And the reason for that is what that's actually going to be doing under the covers is fetching this URL, which is going to give back a 404. So the thing which is failing here is not the fetch. It's the JSON conversion. So the fetch happily goes away and fetches something, but the JSON conversion doesn't work because the thing we got back wasn't JSON. Now imagine if instead we change this to be... pick a website, google.com, which now
or
when we do
go.
Right. So now you can see it says failed to fetch. So now this is the fetch itself is failing to fetch this URL, not because that's not a valid URL, but because it's not allowed to. So you're not allowed to fetch just arbitrary web pages off the internet. You can only fetch things from your own website, basically. So now what's happening is this is throwing an error. And so the try catch around it catches that error and then runs our error handling code, which is here is just a console log it out. So I rushed all that very quickly.
That's good.
What did this say before?
I don't know. Oh,
Well,
Command Z.
yeah, I tried that, but it didn't. Oh no,
Oh,
it did.
you could.
Yeah, there it is. Yes. Right, good. Okay, so sorry, a little diversion there, but so I think that's what we're being asked for. Yes.
Yeah,
So yes, I also breezed past a 404. Yes, sorry, I
I
should have
got
done
you.
that.
We're doing it in the chat.
Cool. So, are we happy with that now? Yep, good. So that's all green stripes, so we will carry on.
Learners made a good point. Like, hey, we usually wouldn't just print the error to the console. Like, we'd probably like send it back or add it to like logs. Like, we'd probably do something with that error message.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
yeah.
there's very little point in going, oh, there was an error. Oh well, and just writing it out somewhere that no one's looking at. So console logging the errors is useful when you're building a website and debugging it. But you should do something. You know, you'd think you'd pop up something saying to the user, I couldn't fetch that, or couldn't get access to the forum, or something. But this is basically an example. So yes, don't do in live real websites, don't only do this because it's not actually useful. But for the purposes of a demo, this just goes to show that if there is an error, then we can write whatever code we like in here to handle it. So we could pop up an alert box, or we could show a thing saying failed to fetch, do you want to retry? Or we could send that error back to our server to record the fact that it happened, or something. Okay, that's 10.
Sorry, I'm not chatting
Right,
about.
so well, you carry on with that, and I can talk about this. So
Yeah.
this create an error function called show latest post, which takes a single data parameter. So this is something you've done 100 times, I suspect. Show latest post equals data. So that's just creating an arrow function which takes a data parameter and doesn't currently do anything, and it's called show latest posts.
Oh, so Tower of Brilliance is like, hey, wait. We can use this to handle stuff like form submissions or sending data to a server. Like, this is how we'd use this in the real world.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Oh.
All right. The bootcamp is free. Free Code Camp is free. But Free Code Camp is a registered nonprofit in the United States, and they work on donations to make all the stuff we do. None of the money comes to us. If you want to, and if you've got the extra cash, it's really nice to donate to Free Code Camp, but please don't spend money you don't have. And there's no obligation as part of the boot camp.
Okay. You should definitely do it. It's a good idea.
So as we build out our show latest post functions, we'll need to call it to see our changes. Okay, we're just going to call it at the end of our try block. Show latest posts. And then in our smooth braces, put data as the argument.
Yep. That seems good.
This is not nearly as painful as it could be.
Yep.
Okay. Oh no, destructuring. I was like, oh, we're perfect. This can't hurt us. And then destructuring, I do not remember how to do.
So here you could imagine we could do const topic list equals data dot topic list.
Yes.
Right, and then we could do const users equals data dot users, but that's obviously terribly tiresome. So instead, what we'll do is use object destructuring. So what that's doing is it's saying, I want you to map the data, which is an object, onto this object we've created here, but only the bits that I've mentioned. So data has a load of stuff in it, but we only care about topic list and users. So it's essentially saying, I want to make an object that which looks like this, populated with the things with the same name from this. So now we have a variable topic list, console.log topic list, which will be correctly populated. It does exactly the same thing as const topic list equals data.topic list.
Very chill and doable. Okay.
Because you've already talked about object destructuring, and it's not.
We have. It's one of the things where everybody else seems really comfortable with it, and I just sort of like gray out very slightly. Where I was like, yeah.
It took me a while to get it because I spent a long time doing that and not understanding why it didn't work. But it
And
doesn't
Stephen is
work.
like, so is object destructuring like a hidden method that like just sort of not pop because that's a specific terminology, but just sort of like, hey, give me this thing from these things, but only these things. I'm not
Yeah.
helping.
Yes, basically, Steve. That,
Yes,
as I say,
Steve.
the way I tend to think of it is you create an object here, or you're creating like a template for an object here, and then you're telling it populate my template with those named things from here. But yeah, it is a bit confusing, and in a case like this where you're only grabbing two things, I probably wouldn't do it. I'd
Yeah.
probably just have the
Yeah.
2 lines that I showed before because they're easier to understand. I don't have to think through, what does this mean? Okay, I get it. But we've been asked to do it this way, so we'll do it this way.
Yeah. We're agreeable. We're helping. So the topic list contains a topics array. Okay. We're going to destructure it again, but yeah. Oh, destructuring just for one seems
Yeah.
they just want us to get the syntax.
Yes, they do. Again, I would have done that
Yeah.
myself.
This is
Or
what
I
our
probably
hearts
wouldn't have
sing
even
for.
done that. I'd have just used topic list dot topics everywhere I needed to use it. But they're trying to get us together.
They're trying to teach us things that will carry us through as we learn and grow. We got that. Yeah. So let's start putting populate. So we're gonna.
So bear with me, just so we remember, posts container here in the HTML is this. It's the body of this table. So all this stuff up here is the head, and there's a body down below which currently has nothing in it, and we're going to start populating it.
So we're gonna take. So we're gonna take map the where map topics. Oh no, wait. Post container.inner HTML is going to be set to equal to. Yeah. Oh, I wonder if this is a good idea to do this.
So what
Topics.
we're doing? Yep.
Oh, no, just pointing out what we're doing is we're filling the table with data from JSON. So what we're doing is we're going to someplace else and getting this data and then injecting it into our web page. Which, I mean, who doesn't want to inject stuff into your web page? This is probably a fantastic idea we should do all the time.
Well, so we'll do this step first, and then when we get on to the next step, we'll have a look at that. But we need to do this one first. So what it wants us to do is topics is an array. So it wants us to do topics.map, which means we're going to provide a callback function in here, and you've already talked about this in the functional programming class, right? Where we're going to call this callback function for every item in topics and return something.
Yeah.
So here we need, what does it say? An empty arrow function which takes item as its parameter. So that's what it wants us to do, and we can see here it's dumped out a load of commas.
Oh.
But we'll get to why in a second. But does that make sense? So we're calling this function on every item of topics. Whatever that function returns for each iteration, for each item, will then get back an array of all of those return values, which we're then sticking into postcontainer.innerHTML. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But I think we want to talk about this a little bit more, right?
We do, but probably not on this step.
Not on this step, on the next one. We want to get that little like bomf, and then look at the scans.
So inside the map method, destructure the following property. So this is just the destructuring thing that we've done before. So I'm going to copy all them because there's loads. Const that lot equals item. Okay, so tidy up the indentation just so it looks nicer. So we haven't actually done anything new here yet. We've just done another thing. But here we're destructuring loads of things. So this would look a lot more annoying if we weren't using object destruction, because it would be const id equals item.id, next line, const title equals item.title. And so this does seem a bit nicer here when we're pulling loads of them out. And that looks okay.
So now we're going to build a table. Woof. We're going to return. And then the template literals were the weird little backticks. Oh, because we're gonna start a new table row. So the backtick, and then we're gonna do a HTML element tr.
Yeah, and then we want to close that tr.
Close it as well. Thank you. So, wow, because it just threw all these onto different rows, as you would expect.
Which is exactly what you'd think, because what we're doing is for every topic, and we are now returning tr end tr. So if we how do I see there it is, right? Where's all my TRs gone?
Are they over there?
Oh no.
Oh.
That's weird.
Are they over there is not super helpful. Doc type ... is not correct, Jason.
But okay, what I was hoping to do was show that now what we've got is in our T body we'll have TR, NTR. So we've got lots and lots of TRs, and then the commas are there because what we've got here is an array which we're assigning to inner HTML. So what the array will actually become is a string of the first thing, comma, the second thing, comma, the third thing, comma, the fourth thing, and that's what all the commas are. But yeah, so does that make sense there? We've just done the destructuring thing, and now we're just returning an empty table row for every item in topics. We're not currently getting the stuff out of item and doing anything with it. We're just returning an empty table row for each thing.
Okay.
So next.
In our preview window, we should see a column of commas. Okay, we do. We should chain the join method to join map.
Yeah. So what we're doing here is this whole topics.map thing. Remember, all of this is our inner callback function.
Is going to get a dot
all
map.
Of this is where we're calling topics.map. And then so here at this point on the end here, we've got an array. So we do join there. And what that's going to do is it's going to take the array and join all the items together with an empty string and then assign the result to post container. So now we don't get all the commas. If I put an exclamation mark in here, we should get a load of exclamation marks.
Hey. So the commas was like here are the spaces, but like between the array items.
Because if we hand inner HTML expects a string. If we hand it something that isn't a string, like an array, then the array gets stringified. It gets turned into a string. So if you try and print out an array, what it prints is the string version of that array, which is the first thing in the array, comma, the second thing, comma, the third thing. So what this is actually doing, we've now got a load of table rows in here which are invisible because there's nothing in them. So if we do that, we can see that what we're doing now is we're returning one TR.
And Stephen pointed this out as well. Like great minds, like, hey, you know what? If we put something in those rows, it makes this a lot easier to like hold it in your head.
We can now see what's going on.
And Stephen's like, hey, this is because map always returns an array.
Correct.
Amazing.
Because what map does is it's a method of an array. So topics here is an array. We call map on it. And then it runs this function once for every item in the array and gives you back an array of the results. So it runs it on the first thing, and then the first item in the results is the result of running that on the first thing.
Amazing. Thank you. Obviously, I tell you you're amazing constantly, so you're probably very tired of that.
Inside your TR element, add 5 empty. Okay, we can just do this, I think. I don't think this needs a great deal of explanation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now you can see we've got our table rows, which will now have 5 cells in them. but there's nothing in any of them. So this is in the first one, this is in the second one, and so
You make a solid, like you and Steven together, like the dream team, but y'all make a solid point that like putting stuff in, getting weird, experimenting is really what saves us here.
Yeah, it's much more helpful to think about it this way, I think. Okay, so we should be able to carry on there. To display the topic. So this is, remember, this is inside our template literal. So this is a string we're returning.
We're going to make a P element within the first TD.
Yeah.
And then
between the paragraph tags, add an embedded expression that contains
the embedded expression is the $ curly braces. Yeah. That takes the title variable. Well, we also need a class called post title. Yeah.
So we can see here.
Whoa.
So now you see we've got the results because because for every one of the topics, we're now using the title that we extracted from that topic and returning this. So what we're doing here is taking the data that came from the JSON and returning it as HTML. Do we think this is a good idea?
Is this? And Tower of Brilliance was like, are we retrieving data from a server-side database and then just like poking that into our website?
Yeah. So retrieving data from a server-side database is not in itself a bad thing.
It's not bad, but like then putting that on your website.
So let's imagine the thing is, so imagine we can think of this as if we just put this in the index.html. Right? If we put stuff in index.html, then it would be as the same thing that we're doing here. We're constructing a bunch of HTML in code and then sticking it in the page. So what we want to do is what's the best way of telling it not to do this? Where do we call show latest posts? We call it there. So I'm going to comment that out for now. Okay. So it now doesn't run this. So you can imagine in here, in the index.html, in this T body, we'll just do what it was doing manually. So it added a TR and then a load of TDs, right? So, and then the post title, well, I'll put here, title of the first post. And there it is in the page, right? So this title of the first post is something that was typed in by a person.
Yeah.
By a user somewhere. So the concern is, what would happen if they made the title of their post something like, say,
butts?
Well, no. I mean that's up to your forum. I'm thinking about things which are more damaging. So imagine what would happen, for example, if you ended the TD here. So there, let's make this a bit clearer so it's easier to view it all, right? So there's the title of their post. But imagine if this went NTD, NTR, end table, hello, right? So here we've just ended the table, just in the middle of the table, and then we put the word hello, and here is the word hello outside the table, right? Because this is actually HTML. So if they'd made the title of their post all of this, then suddenly, because we're inserting the thing they typed as HTML into our page, then it takes effect as HTML. So this is now breaking our layout. You can imagine them putting so now this is all happening outside our table entirely. Right. So here's the concern. What we're worried about here is, imagine they typed in all of this as a title to their forum post. Then suddenly the thing that they're typing in is becoming part of our page. So this is why using if I'll get rid of all of this. So we go back to here. So the thing that they're doing here by just returning a block of HTML which contains something typed in by people, this is dangerous and you should not do this. Unfortunately, we have to do it for the course.
So Kristen is saying, hey, the issue is that we're injecting, and you'll often see that like an XML injection attack, an injection attack. This is injecting code, and we don't want to let our user, we don't want to let our forum posters, we don't trust a lot of people. I trust you, I trust these people, but like just weirdos on the internet, nah. And this is giving them the ability to write our HTML on our webpage, and like it's too much, it's too much.
Yeah. So there are concerns, and you should not do this thing where you build up HTML in code and include in it something that was typed in by a person, because that thing that was typed in might be malicious. It might be designed to break your website. Or imagine, for example, if the title that they typed in for their forum post contained some JavaScript.
Ooh.
That JavaScript would then run on the page, but importantly, it would run for everyone else who visits that page. So they could steal your login cookie, for example, so that they could then log into the forum as you, which we don't want. So this is a bad practice, and we should not be doing it. Now, we're going to have to in order to carry on with the course, but
we don't love it. We're not in love with this.
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and say, do we have any questions from folks? Because you've done a stunning job. I did not expect to, this sounds like I'm damning you with fate praise, but I did not expect to be so comfortable understanding a weight.
Cool. That's,
if we've got any questions, we'll super happily look through them. Otherwise, we will replace Stuart tomorrow with an equally dashing, mysterious person to explain JavaScript with me. Oh, Kaya's like, okay, but if we wanted to do this, what might be a safer way to get this information and put it onto our website?
So you can do it by constructing HTML elements inside JavaScript. So you've used create element, for example, and then you can set the text content of those elements you've created. Now it's a bit more fiddly than returning a string, because you'd have to do document.create element this tr, and then document.create element this td, and then document.create element this p, and then set the content of the p, and then put the p inside the td, and then put the td inside the tr and everything. So it is a bit more fiddly to do, but the key point is it's not a gargantuan security hole like this is. So
and this is what Nojo suggested as well, saying, that's because we wanted to be doing we wanted to be messing with text and not HTML to feel safer.
Yes. Now, unfortunately, here we want to be the way this exercise is designed. We want to be creating HTML. We're literally creating HTML elements that we want to put into the page. So we can't just use inner text for it. If we inner text it, I'll show you. So we're currently returning all of this. This should be working now. Is it not working? What do I have to do to make it pay attention? Why is it not doing it?
Oh, look, I assure you I do not know. Sorry.
You'd be doing it, shouldn't it? Run. Oh, did we stop?
It's because we already did it, and now it's like, hey, I have another green stripe.
Oh, it's because I commented this out. Okay. So now we've got all of those. So imagine if we made this inner text rather than an HTML. Then what we get is that. So inner text does not treat this stuff you've inserted as HTML, but we want it to treat this stuff as HTML. We want it to treat this bit as HTML, and we want it to treat this bit as HTML because we did them. We don't want it to treat this as HTML, which is the information that we've got from the user that a person typed in. So that's why we can't use inner text here. But yeah, in general, my policy is just don't use inner HTML. Cool. Anytime you see an inner HTML, it is a security hole waiting to happen. Don't do it. It's basically my personal policy on this. Anytime I want to use this, I don't.
Anytime somebody tells you to do it, say, oh, no, my bestie Stuart said I can't.
Do it. Absolutely. And if they have a complaint about it, send them to me and I will happily back you up 100%.
Amazing. This sounds like a fantastic time to go ahead and break. Y'all's homework is to go ahead and preview. Just try the next couple of steps. This is a really good question. So the user is always able to inject HTML and CSS through the developer tools if they want anyway. Is there a difference? So if they're doing it in the developer tools, they're really only doing it in like the version of your website that renders in their browser.
Yeah, you can insert things in the dev tools, but only to yourself. Right. So
It doesn't like
fine.
go back and get the original
You
website.
can go to special effort to own yourself, and that's fine. That's allowed. If you want to do that, you're welcome to do so. If you want to compromise your own account, you're allowed. We can't stop you.
And Nojo's like, oh, the user from doing stuff in developer tools can't like get that back into your system.
Yeah. I can't make if I make a change in the dev tools, it changes my view of this website, but it doesn't change that website itself. So if Jess goes there, she won't see the changes that I've made. But with something like this, if I filled in my forum post title as having some script in it, for example, then that would take effect on everybody who viewed that page, not just me.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and call time just so everybody can go have an easy time. Do you know what? We've done the part that really focuses on the new topics. Your homework is to have a look at some of the rest of this. We'll pick this up from, we'll pick this up from 20 tomorrow. But this is not a huge deal. We can go ahead and let y'all go for the day. Thank you so much. But your homework is to just chill. There's been a lot of stuff. This doesn't have to be done tomorrow. This doesn't have to be done next week. This can get done when this gets done. Stuart, do you have any like bonus homework?
No. This is right. I mean, if you carry on through this course, which you're certainly not obliged to do, but if you do, it's essentially more of this. You're constructing HTML, inserting it into the page. So you can see here it fills in the topics. It then goes on to do the avatars and a bunch of other things. But it's all the basic principle. The important thing to get from this course is the await stuff, which we've talked about.
Yeah. I'm going to wait for it. And then when I got it, I can go. Amazing. Stuart, thank you so much for your time.
No problem. Enjoy the rest of the boot camp.
Bye.